Hi, welcome back to Travel Talk Tuesday. I was just feeling a theme song today, so maybe I'll change it up every week. We'll see how that goes. So today's Travel Talk Tuesday question is, when did you start traveling? And why? This is actually one of my favorite questions to answer because it means I get to share a story that I love to tell. So the first time I ever traveled was when I was a little toddler. We moved from California to Washington, but no, that's not where this story is starting. So when I was growing up, I always wanted to see the world. I remember having a really early interest in country flags. I used to be obsessed with memorizing country flags, and I loved asking my mom weird questions about global diplomacy at a very young age that I didn't realize were about global diplomacy, but they were questions like, why was money invented? And why are there borders? I'm sure my mom loved answering those questions. Just so easy to answer, just a yes or no. So anyways, I had an early interest in travel, and I remember hearing about people going on these trips, and even just like people watching as people walked down our street when I was growing up, and I used to like look at them and wish I were them because I just imagined them being this person who traveled and had a lot of friends. My point is, when I was younger, all my family and I ever did was go on road trips and take flights down to go see family in Southern California. When I say all we did was go on road trips and go to California, by road trips, I pretty much just mean Canada. And I know that seems like further away from Washington State than California, but it's not. Let me show you. I grew up right here. Vancouver, BC, which is where we usually went when we went to Canada, is right here. And all the way down here is California. So I hope that gives you an idea of why, as a child, I didn't really see Canada as like a totally different country. Like, obviously I did. They had different currency and they had different speed limit signs. Just little things, but overall it was like I was just on a normal like road trip. It wasn't very far. I think from the house I grew up in up to like the center of the city in Vancouver, BC is about maybe 2.5 hours depending on traffic. And now I am absolutely able to appreciate these things, and maybe I wouldn't have appreciated international travel as a child, but I was definitely jealous of the people who were like, oh, my parents are going to take me to Paris for Christmas. I'm like, so, fast forward to college. When I was selecting colleges, I specifically chose a college that was far away from home, but not too far. I wanted it to be no more than like a 1-day drive away from home. Looking back now, I'm like, that's not very far at all, but at the time, it felt huge to me to move all the way from Washington down to Oregon. I had never had much money growing up. Like, I always knew travel was expensive, and I was the poorest in my whole life in college. Of course, who isn't like the poorest in their whole life in college? So I just assumed that I would really not be able to travel very much, like ever. And I knew I wanted to study abroad, but I also was just like craving more than that. And I was pretty convinced I wasn't gonna have it. I remember having these times where I thought, wow, it's so sad that I'll never see every country in the world. I'll never see every... This is why I love having a dog. But I remember thinking, I'm never going to see everywhere in the world, and that is so sad. And instead of thinking on a positive note, I was looking at it in a negative way. And then I realized that there were some really awesome programs at my school besides study abroad that would allow me to travel. He hates traveling. So I applied for this alternative spring break program. If you're from America, I'm sure you know the whole stereotype about spring break. It's like when young people go to Mexico to go drink because they're all 18, but none of them are 21. Like, spring break is meant for partying and making bad decisions. So the college program was a volunteer program where you went to a destination and volunteered. I've always been really into volunteering, but I would be lying to you if I wasn't honest about why I signed up for this trip. I signed up because there was a program in New Orleans. And at the time I was like, I've never been anywhere further than California. So New Orleans would be possibly life-changing. So I applied for this program, listed my preferences of places that I wanted to go. I'm pretty sure if I hadn't gotten into the New Orleans program, I wasn't going to do it. These are like really bad reasons to sign up for a volunteer program, to be honest, but it all turned out okay in the end. I actually learned a lot about Hurricane Katrina, about New Orleans, but above all else, what stood out to me was that it was my first time flying further than California. So that was a huge launching off point for me. So then about a year later, year, I was applying for study abroad. And my goal when I was studying abroad was to go to a country that speaks English. That's literally my goal. I just wanted to go abroad and go be somewhere in a new country, but I didn't want to have to learn a new language. So I ended up in Ireland. Have you ever been to Ireland? Although his birthday is on St. Patrick's Day. So the study abroad program that I was doing was really, really awesome because I was living in Galway, but there were organized trips every other weekend to other parts of Ireland. So that allowed me to see a ton of Ireland, and I even got to go to Northern Ireland. But I found myself jealous of other people's travels and feeling like I was unable to travel despite being in a different country. Basically, there were all these students who were studying abroad who had parents willing to pay for their trips or at least savings accounts. I don't know how they paid for all this stuff, but they would just like spend a random weekend in Paris or use their week off of school to go on a trip and go travel around other parts of Europe. My friend, who was also my roommate, her and I didn't have very much money. So we were always really jealous of these people who were going on these really awesome sounding excursions. And I felt like I was in Europe and I was just dying to go see something in Europe other than Ireland. So my friend and I organized a week-long backpacking trip for ourselves. Now, neither of us were backpackers. We planned this trip that included all budget airlines, like the cheapest flights we could possibly get, some of the cheapest hostels we could find in these places, and like all the free things that we could possibly do in these cities. We started out by going to Edinburgh. And when we were in Edinburgh, I ended up at the Edinburgh Castle. And that is where I discovered some of my family history. My mom's maiden name is Sutherland, and I knew that was part of a Scottish tribe. Tribe? Clan? Clan? Let's do clan. I think that's a more Scottish sounding word. Their family motto was Semper, which is what I have tattooed right here, which is a little odd since Semper is French, and I was in Scotland looking up a Scottish family history, but c'est la vie. I don't know what it was, but I just felt such a connection in that moment because I was in another country looking up this like ancient family history, trying to like learn something about my background. And although I've never really like felt pride for like a family last name or anything like that, I just had this like aha moment where I felt fearless and I felt like I could do anything. And then the next place we went was Amsterdam. I remember trying to walk around the city and getting super lost, but we had an amazing time anyways. And we stayed at a hostel outside the city, and we had to go on this whole like public transportation like journey to go find it, and everything was in Dutch and it felt like really fun and exotic. And then to get from Amsterdam to Prague, we actually ended up taking a bus, an overnight bus. And it was an awful bus ride. I didn't sleep a wink, but it was still amazing. I was like on this bus going through Germany. We arrive in Prague, don't even have a common language with our hosts, but we figure things out and everything's fine. Nothing on this trip went terribly, which was great because the whole thing was a huge confidence boost for me. I mean, it was cheap. It wasn't a very expensive trip at all. And the reason why we went to 3 cities in 1 week was because that was the cheapest way to do it. So the whole time I was in Ireland, the only time I left, other than to go on a quick trip to Belfast, was on this week-long excursion. And let's go back to that whole backpacking thing. We were technically backpacking since we were staying in hostels and taking buses, and we did travel with only one backpack, nothing else, just a backpack. But it was not backpacking in the traditional sense because we had like school backpacks, like JanSport style backpack, and they weren't even full because the cheap airlines will charge you so much to check a bag or to even carry on a bag that won't fit underneath the seat in front of you. Like even just for the overhead bin, they'll charge you a bunch of money and it'll like double your plane ticket price. And our biggest concern on this trip was money, not looking good or anything like that. So I remember I had 1 pair of pants, 1 pair of shoes, and very limited everything else. And we were hand washing things in sinks, but it was okay and it was all good. And that whole experience of just living really minimally for a week, going to places I'd never been, that whole thing made me realize that I can travel. I don't need money to travel. I don't need to plan this huge extravagant trip. I don't even need someone to go with me to travel. I had this just moment where I was like excited about travel, and I'm getting like goosebumps right now thinking about it. I don't know how to fully explain this, but basically I just had this moment where I was like, I can do whatever I want to do. If there's something I want to do, I set my mind to it and I can do it. And if I want to travel, I'm gonna travel. And so that's basically how I started traveling. Because I had such confidence from going to Europe, when I had gotten back in the late springtime, so I had a summer before my senior year of college, I was missing all my friends, and I got a call one summer day, and my friend was like, we're gonna go to Vegas for Thanksgiving. I had no money. I was like super in debt, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make this work. And I'm pretty sure booking that entire Vegas trip cost about $350. And I met my husband while I was on that Vegas trip. So really, if I hadn't gained the confidence to go traveling and actually gone out there and agreed to do crazy things like just randomly go to Vegas for a Thanksgiving break, I may never have met Eric. Even though I am not a digital nomad and I'm not on some like crazy excursion for like a year all around the globe, my life is going to include a lot of travel, more travel than I've even done up to this point. And being from the small town that I'm from, the amount of travel I've already done in my life is a lot for people in my town. Sometimes I feel uncomfortable talking about my travel experiences because I feel like I'm bragging in a way. Because a lot of people think that travel is too expensive or they're just not brave enough, or, you know, there's all kinds of excuses for why you can't travel. I failed to mention this, but Editing Lord would like to say, even if you have anxiety, you can also travel. That's what this whole channel is about. So be sure to subscribe. Also, welcome to the Fearless Fam. But more than anything, I'm just so grateful that I had that realization so early in my life. The experiences I've had on my travels have been some of the best in my life, and it's not stopping anytime soon. And it's all because a negative Nancy finally took a trip and turned her thoughts around. I don't know how to end this, but that's how I started traveling. I want to know when you guys started traveling and why you started traveling. If you want to hear answers to this question from other travelers with completely different experiences than my own, be sure to check out the links down below. I have all the members of the Travel Talk Tuesday tribe listed in the description below, as well as a playlist of all the videos that were made answering this week's topic. And stay tuned for tomorrow, because we're gonna get a little TMI here on this channel. It's gonna be very fun. We're gonna talk about bathrooms in China. Thank you for watching today, guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay, bye!